right, hello and welcome. This is Brian G, the EVOG, and this is our inaugural EVOG podcast. I've got my man Adam A/304 joining me, but just by way of introduction, as I said, I'm Brian G. I'm a first-generation U.S. citizen and college graduate. I'm a former Division I and professional basketball player. Played 5 years overseas after college. I've been fortunate enough through that experience and not having been born in the U.S. to have lived in 6 countries on 4 continents. I'm a husband and father of 3 as well. But the reason I'm here with you guys in this experience is because we've owned 7 EVs over the course of the last 10 and a half years, right? Starting back in 2013. We'll get into my EV journey at some point, but 7 EVs over 3 different brands. Over the course of the last year or so, we've gotten into the CCS world, which has been really, really interesting. And the last thing I'll say here, Adam, before I bring it to you, is that today we own 5 EVs. We've got adult children who drive, so we've got 5 EVs. And the way I describe that is we've got Sex in the Driveway with Valkyrie, which is our 23 R1T, Rivian R1T, and Mystique, which is our, again, another 23 Fisker Ocean One. So that's a little bit about who I am. Adam, you're the famous YouTuber. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about you that perhaps they didn't know before?
Yeah, great. Brian, once again, thanks for having me. And I'm real excited about this because picking your brain is going to be fun. And I feel like there's a lot to learn about EVs out there that we can definitely attack. On my end, I have 5+ years. It's more like 8 years experience in radio. I am a jack of all trades by nature, self-taught in the video space and all that. But for now, I am an EV creator, and that's why we're here. I do primarily the Fisker Ocean right now, which I made a video back in 2021 that was kind of the first research project on this iteration of Henrik Fisker's dive into the vehicle market, and had a lot of success. And I just continued creating from there. So happy to be on the journey with you. But yeah, like I said, I'm just a guy on the internet with some experience in radio, playing around with EVs. My driveway right now is 2 Teslas. I have a 21 Model Y and a 21 Model 3, which my wife drives. My first plug-in car was somewhat of a unicorn itself. It was a Honda Clarity plug-in hybrid, which I think probably 40,000 total made, and Honda has since obviously discontinued its entire EV efforts, and that was kind of the last ditch effort to take the Acura NSX powertrain and put it into something that maybe could profit for Honda. But so I had one plug-in and kind of fell in love and dove into that. I also have my final, I guess, in that technology realm product, I have a Tesla Powerwall and a 14 solar panel setup in my yard. I'm one of those weird people that didn't put it on the roof. I put it just in the backyard. So we're here to talk about electric vehicles, kind of the state of the market, and what's coming next. And Brian, I'm happy to kick it back to you to kind of get started and maybe talk about what this channel is about and what your goals are.
Yeah. So I think I watched that first video that you mentioned going back to 21. I'm not sure if that was the one, but the first video I can remember watching of you was you up here in the attic and sweating like like you were in a sauna. And I swear, over the course of that video, you must have apologized 8, 10 times. I did. Just letting people know, hey, this is what's going on. But I don't know, it connected with me, right? And then I've loved the work that you've done and the way that you do it. So I appreciate you mentoring me to some extent through this journey and collaborating with me on this specific podcast that we're kicking off here today. I mentioned Sex in the Driveway with Mystique and Valkyrie. Just for context, right? We've got a 2016 Model X 90D. We've got a 2018 Model S 100D, midnight silver. I bought that one used, specifically wanted that spec because it was the last year that they had the sunroof, right? And I was also looking for an upgraded MCU2, which I was able to find, and I grabbed it. Loved the Model S. The other vehicle that we have in the Tesla family is my daughter's 2018 Model 3 long range. All right, that was my wife's car, and then my daughter took that over when she passed her driving test, literally the Friday before Monday's first day of school. And then over the course of last year, we were fortunate to get a Rivian R1T, which is arguably the best EV we've ever owned. That thing is an absolute monster. We can talk about that. But the most recent addition to our family is what I call Mystique, our 2023 Fisker Ocean 1 in Mariana with the black F3 wheels and Malibu interior. So that's a little bit about the driveway, the garage, and the perspectives that hopefully I'm able to bring to this, going all the way back to our first delivery day on Valentine's Day, 2013 is when we picked up our first Model S. So, I've been watching you and some other YouTubers for a while, and I don't know, I feel like there are some things that I can add to the discussion. And so over that period of time, I've learned a ton. And so the primary intention, if you will, with this is to be able to share what I've learned. The second is to be able to connect, right, with folks like yourself and other EV owners and enthusiasts out there. So share, connect, and then I also want to continue learning. I'm fascinated by people. I love cars, and maybe on one of these, we'll talk about why we love cars, because I can trace mine all the way back to South America, where I was born and raised until the age of 12. All right, but that'll be a story for another day, because I'm also curious to know what got you into cars. But that's a little bit about the intent for me for doing this.
I think that the car interest could be an entire episode. We could probably go as deep as you wanted with that. And I had to switch to EV after the solar panels, because there was, I'm sitting here taking a road trip, paying for gasoline, because I didn't, I had 40 miles of range during the week. I didn't use any gasoline, but I'm sitting here paying for gasoline on road trips. Like, this is not the way. So, we could, like I said, we could do an entire episode on that. But you did mention people, and you did actually have an experience today. Do you want to get into that? There was a Fisker meetup, and it was Virginia, was it not?
Yeah, that was, I came home, my wife asked me, hey, how was it? And I don't know that I had reflected on it until she asked me that question. And it was awesome. It was awesome. I wasn't sure what to expect. And ultimately what it was a Fiskerati sort of sponsored coast-to-coast Fisker Ocean meetup, right? So in a number of different markets, I want to say it's like 20 different markets or cities around the country. Fisker Ocean owners got together today. Now, we're in the mid-Atlantic here, right? You're in the great state of West Virginia. I'm in Maryland, just outside of D.C. This morning, as I was getting ready to leave here, it was about 17 degrees, right? And it's warming up to about 25, right? So it's freezing. And I wasn't sure, how many folks we would have ultimately attend, right? We were in the top 5 in terms of registrations. Not sure what the number was, but, I got over there this morning. It was from 8 to 11. I ended up getting there right around 9 o'clock. So
perfect.
Nice and fashionably late. And as I'm pulling in, right, this is in a sort of a strip mall. Our anchor was Panera, and there happened to be 4 EVgo DC fast chargers right there, which I'll come back to in a little bit. But as I'm pulling in, I probably saw anywhere from 8 to 10 Fisker Oceans parked, right? And folks were outside their cars in these temperatures, just chatting it up with each other. So, I picked out a spot to park Mystique. I grabbed my camera and got out and just started to, connect with some of the folks that were there. I've got one other friend who reconnected us because he saw me on your channel and reached out for my information. Jesse, who lives not too far from where I am here, but he had other family commitments and couldn't make it. I bring him up because he's the only other person that I had seen with a Fisker Ocean. I hadn't seen any other vehicles either in this area or on the road trip that we took ours on, a couple of weeks after getting it up to Massachusetts. So it was great to be in that environment where you saw all of these different vehicles, got a chance to talk to different owners about why did they pick the Fisker Ocean and what their experience has been thus far.
Yeah, I'm excited to kind of find out what people thought. But one of the things that you mentioned, because we've already spoken about this, and you made some really good points that I kind of wanted to bring back from that conversation, is the temporary registration tags. Do you want to, kind of, enlighten us on that?
Yeah. I remember all the way back to 2013 with that first Tesla Model S. I kid you not, the temp tag that they gave us was about this wide, and it was half, so it was like this big, and it was in the window, right, of the rear window of the vehicle. And so you could barely see it, right? And I don't know how many times I got stopped. Probably within the first month, I kid you not, I got stopped like 3 times, right? So I know with a new startup, right, not necessarily having a presence within every single state, these are some things you got to navigate. For context, we ended up having anywhere from 15 to 20 Fisker Oceans at the meetup this morning. One of them, and she took delivery, I think she said early October or late September. And
okay, so about within a month of when you did.
Correct. We took delivery on October 25th. And our first set of temp tags expired last week. Was that last week? It was on January 12th. Yes, that was last week.
Okay.
2 weeks ago is when ours expired. But she was the only one there. That was a big part of our discussion at some point, right? Was just trying to navigate, did you get the email from title and registration? Did you already get yours extended? How did you do it? And so on. So there was great dialogue about that. In our case, as I said, ours expired on the 12th. I had started to message them. I went back to my vehicle admin, who, by the way, I got to meet in person for the first time today because he was at the event. He's based just outside of Richmond, which is about almost 3 hours from here, 2.5-ish. And he was actually at the event. Anyway, I started reaching out to him about a week before mine was going to expire, a couple of weeks before. And so he started the process. I had been subsequently contacted by their title and registration team and gave them everything that they had asked for. But I just didn't think I would have, my title and registration and my plates. So it literally wasn't until the day before they were going to expire that I ended up getting them sent to me via FedEx. And I'm like, why are they FedExing this? That's expensive. Isn't this something that you can PDF and just email? Never quite got an answer to that. But yeah, we were able to get ours extended. It now has an expiration date of April. And so I'm hopeful that, that would have been, by the time we get to, 6 months, right? So hopefully sometime soon here, we'll get the package in the mail with our title, registration, and tags.
So basically, a lot of these folks are going through that same experience. You said everybody there had temp tags except one. And what was her, what was, I'm sure you were curious as to how she got her tag.
Yeah. So we talked about that a little bit. Real cool lady from Virginia. And I think she said she lives over in Alexandria. And, in the state of Virginia, they have vehicle tax, right? And the way that she explained it, the longer that it took them to get her registration done, the more money she would be liable to pay to the state government. And so
a true early adopter penalty.
Yeah. And in not so many words, she essentially said, look, I hated to do it, but she went straight Karen on them.
Okay.
And it was very effective, right? They ended up getting it done, and she was able to get her tags. And, she seems to be a pretty happy camper now.
Well, I mean, obviously we talk about how with the startup, and obviously you experienced the same thing with Tesla early, but at the same time, it's got to be a challenge, to finish the registration and get the tags. It's like, it's hanging there, I have the same problem in West Virginia. We have a vehicle tax, and I actually addressed that in a previous video when Fisker contacted me saying my sport model had been built. But I asked him, I said, hey, can I register it myself? And from what I've learned from other Fisker Ocean viewers on my channel that have sent me details is that there's some resource in Arizona, that the Arizona DMV has kind of taken all of these registrations and then transferring them to the state that the person is domiciled in. So that could be some of the reason for the backup. But that being penalized, based on the time that it's not there is definitely frustrating. So it's good to know that, one successful registration did take place. What other takeaways did you have from the meetup? I know, let me see if I have anything else. I know you spoke to me about the blue. Talk to me about the gray and the silver and the blue.
So that was one of the cool things about being there and seeing so many Fisker Oceans in one place. And as you and I talked about earlier, I need to start thinking like a content creator, because one of the things that I didn't do, I had my gimbal with my phone on there. I didn't walk around and get video captured of all the different colors. There was a guy there that I met, Mike, that had black, and neither of us could remember what Fisker calls the black. What do they call it? It's not black.
No, it is not.
Is it midnight? Anyway, I can't remember what they call it, but his.
How about
was
I
black
post
on
it right
black.
here? This I'll put right there. I'll put it there.
Okay. Yeah. It's black on black. And it was my first time seeing the black interior, black vegan leather interior. Now, one of the really cool things about the black vegan leather interior is what we're calling the Wakanda striping up near the top, right?
Okay.
I don't know if you and I talked about this, but one of the biggest disappointments I have about the Malibu, and I didn't know this until, pretty close to delivery, is that you only get the Wakanda striping on the seats if you get that black vegan leather, right? So that, it was really cool to see that. It's my first time seeing it, as I mentioned. The white interior, and I don't know why I'm having a brain fart on what they call something sand.
Yeah.
I think about this all the time, and all of a sudden now it's out of my brain. But we'll put a label for it here when we publish.
I got it right here. This is what it's called.
So that was my first time also seeing that in person, right? That white interior. There was a horizon gray that was there, and it happened to be parked right next to a Mariana Ocean One, much like we have. And I couldn't quite tell that it was horizon gray, because being next to, and even when it's not next to it, depending on how the light hits it, it actually looks blue more so than it does gray. So that was interesting. And then I saw this really light blue color, right? And that guy had some questions. I think his name was Kevin. And I asked him, what color is this? Because I don't remember seeing a light blue. And he said, that's silver lining. I said, silver lining? There's nothing silver about this color. It's blue.
Right.
And so we had a little chuckle about that. And, he commented that, he likes it, but he knows someone else who ordered the same color that was not happy when they saw that the car is actually, more blue than it is silver. So that was pretty cool to be able to see all of the different colors in one place. There were a ton of, Big Sur blues, you might imagine.
Oh yeah, I mean that's your press color, that's your launch color. Certainly a beautiful color as well. But it sounds to me like there were many options as far as blue when it comes to the Ocean, at least in those Fisker Ocean One launch colors. Now, I just personal opinion, do you think that was part of the Ocean theme? Maybe that they put the Ocean theme as, even our silvers and grays that have a little blue element to them?
Yeah, that's actually a really good call out there, right? The theme is all about the ocean. The ocean's blue. So I like the way that you put it, right? You've got Big Sur blue, you've got the Mariana blue, we've got horizon gray, which looks blue, and we've got silver lining, which actually looks more blue than it does silver. All those things come together to point back to this is about the ocean. Right. One of the ladies there, the same one that had the actual license plate tags, I ended up telling her, like so many things, it's not about whether or not you actually did it, that the thought counts. But she said she had the thought of bringing little plastic sharks for everybody.
Okay.
Right, to carry on, like keychains, which would have been a nice touch, but she wasn't able to get it done. Maybe for the next one, we can do that.
Speaking of keychains, obviously the key fob has been a hot topic in the Fisker community. And because there were some Fisker resources there today, which you said, your administrator was there, as well as other representatives from Fisker, did you hear any rumors?
All of the Fisker service techs for this area were there. There were at least 3. I want to say there might have been a 4th. But yeah, all those guys were there. So it was, and they were actually helping customers with different issues in their cars. My vehicle was delivered without the tire sealant because they had been exploding, right, in certain conditions. And there's a new version of that he had a supply of. He was able to give me one. For those people who ordered floor mats, he actually had some there to give to them. They had their laptops to flash update cars that hadn't been updated. So that was good.
You didn't have a chance to grab a set of floor mats, though.
No. So I did not order a set of floor mats with this vehicle. I just figured, I'll just go with whatever they come with, and I'm going to get my own, aftermarket. And actually, that's a project that I've got on tap here. I'm going to get a set of custom mats made. This particular maker of these custom mats don't have the Fisker Ocean in their catalog right now. So they sent me a DIY kit to do all of the measurements and send it back to them. And then they'll custom make a set, and my set will be the first one. And depending on how they turn out, then I can share that back to the community. But stay tuned for that on an upcoming video.
Good reason to subscribe to your channel then.
Exactly. Great reason for folks to subscribe, because we'll also have a discount code for those. I just wanted something a little bit nicer than the Liner X that's there.
Sure.
And the nice thing about these, they actually go all the way up the sides of the interior, right? And I fully intend to get them in black with blue to sort of match up with our Malibu interior. And I will be installing the Fisker mats on top of it.
Okay.
Because they're built in such a way that you can do that.
Oh, wow. That's really good to know. So we'll keep you posted on that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and do that also. A rumor about keys. I know that, once again, that's a contentious issue, but what did you hear today?
Yeah, so I'm curious, right? And so as I'm talking to folks, I'm asking tons of questions. One of those questions is, and it's kind of a loaded question, right? Because we know the answer. What is your least favorite thing about this vehicle, right? What's your biggest pet peeve with it? And invariably, the answer was key fob, right? Which is unfortunate. I really feel like, it's the old 90-10 or 80-20 rule, whereas if they address the key fob,
sure,
that's 80 or 90% of customer concerns gone, right? And then you can start to focus on other things. But as we were talking with my vehicle admin, and by the way, he's got an interesting story. He was at Rivian prior to coming on board with Fisker, and he was at Rivian in their very, very early days. And as it relates to key fobs for the Ocean, one of the things he shared was that the key fob is essentially going away. It'll be replaced by two things: a key card, as well as phone as key, right? And that'll happen via software update. So he was not able to tell us, any sort of time frame for that.
Okay.
But they have shared, at least internally, that that's going to happen, right? We're going to get key cards, and we'll have the ability to use phone as key. So, but before we get off at key fobs, one of the things that he told us, and I don't know if I didn't know this or I forgot about it, was that in the early days, because somebody asked him the question, hey, having been at Rivian in the early days, how's that experience different from what we're experiencing now? And his immediate response was, we had all sorts of issues with that carabiner key fob with the Rivian. It wouldn't work. Customers had much of what the Fisker community is dealing with. He said that Rivian customers dealt with that as well. The difference, and this is me adding to this, he didn't mention this, is that it wasn't single-threaded, right? Whereas every single Fisker Ocean owner has one key and only one key, right? Those early Rivian customers, certainly with the launch edition, they had the key fob, they had 2 key cards, and some of them even had the rubber band, right, that they could use, if they're going surfing in the ocean, right? It's totally waterproof. And when they come back, they just, do like we do with our keys and put it on the door handle and it opens up, right? So he didn't mention that, but obviously that's a big difference, right? With Fisker, it's somewhat single-threaded with just that one key fob. What happens if you lose it?
Yeah, it changes from an inconvenience with the Rivian to a necessity that's failing, really, is what the difference is there. Just to keep everything moving, so new key rumors. You were able to talk to a previous Rivian employee, and the key experience seemed to be very similar there as well. And then any other takeaways before we move on that you had as far as the meetup, and maybe anything you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I asked folks about why the Fisker Ocean, right? Because at this point, there are tons of options out there for EV adoption. And I'd love to tell you that there was a ton of variety in the answer, but there were some common threads there again, right? Almost everybody loved the story of the Fisker Ocean, right? And the sustainability aspect of this particular vehicle, right? We love the fact that it's built in a CO2 neutral factory. Granted, it's in Graz, Austria, and not here stateside, right? But it's built in a CO2 neutral factory. The interior has over 100 pounds of recycled materials and so on. The design, people absolutely love the design, right? It's not a Model Y, right? It looks different. It looks cool. It looks aggressive. My favorite description of it is that it looks athletic, right? So that was one of the takeaways from it. I also asked just about everybody that I encountered, would you recommend this? Oh, the other thing is a lot of these people that I talk to, this is their first EV, right? They're not like me with a ton of EV experience. This is their first EV. And I mentioned that because the other question I asked them was, would you recommend this vehicle to a new EV adopter? Would you recommend this to a friend or your boss at work, right? Someone who's going to, be in touch with you and come back to you about their experience. And everyone said yes. I would still recommend this vehicle. And so as we start to reflect on that, the things that we're dealing with are minor software glitches here and there, and this key fob situation, which, as we just talked about, is going to be resolved. And next week will be 3 months, right, that we've owned our Fisker Ocean 1, and we've already gotten 4 over-the-air updates. Now, they haven't been significant in terms of features added, but it's foundational stuff that lays the groundwork, right? It's plumbing, essentially, so that they can now start to release a lot more in the way of software updates is how I'm looking at that.
Right. You've gotten, just to kind of nutshell it, you've gotten navigation changes. Some of the visualizations are better. You can add waypoints via search. You got a trip meter.
Yep.
And kind of more dense information in one place, and as well as some kind of various and sundry improvements on top of that. And that's just in the 3 months that you've had it. So very good news there. And honestly, the conclusion I can draw from that information that you were saying is that even with the inconveniences, this early adopter penalty, if you will, these people are still recommending this car to others. So definitely, good to hear that. And a great segue into probably the hottest topic in Fisker news right now, which is this NHTSA investigation, if you will. And there are, I think there were 20-some complaints, 28 complaints when I addressed this on my channel. I'll link that video in the description. But there are more now. And I don't know how much you've gotten to look at those. But I really would, and I think the audience would also benefit from your take on, the braking situation.
Yeah, so we didn't spend much time talking about that, believe it or not, during the meetup today. It did come up as a topic of conversation, but we didn't spend a ton of time on it. Almost all of us are in the forums, and we've seen those complaints in the forums that you read on NHTSA's website. So, and I personally experienced it one time, right? It was, I want to say the day after Thanksgiving. I was going out to visit another YouTuber. Shout out to Purcell. And my brother on the other side of our beltway here. And as I was moving from, I needed to make a left turn to get onto the highway. So I was going from, like black asphalt onto a different type of concrete surface, right? And being an experienced EV driver, I release the accelerator, which is the same as, hitting the brake for a nice vehicle, expecting the vehicle to slow down. But that was taking place as I was simultaneously changing surface. And what happened was the regen didn't kick in the way it normally would. And so it felt like the vehicle just sort of skid forward. Right. And it's a little bit jarring, particularly as I was about to make a left turn there, and I didn't get the grabbing of the regenerative braking as was expected. And if you're expecting to slow down or come to a stop and the vehicle is still going, it feels like an acceleration, but that's not what it was. So aware of the problem. Right. What I was disappointed about was that Fisker didn't come out immediately with a statement to address it. Right. That came, I want to say, almost 48 hours later. So it has been addressed, and it was pretty straightforward. Right. We're cooperating with the investigation and have been since it was first brought to our attention. But more importantly, we fixed this issue in version 1.10, which was released, I want to say, in November or early December. And so it's been addressed for some time now. The issue I have is that I went back to read the release notes on version 10, right? And there is a bullet in there that talks about enhancements or some sort of a tweak, and we'll insert that here on the video. But there is a bullet there that talks about an enhancement to regenerative braking, right? But there's just not a ton of detail in the release notes such that, people would know that this has already been addressed, right? So it's one of the ways that Fisker not being as, call it detailed, call it transparent, is the word that I tend to use, where it hurts them, because this was already addressed, right? But because there was this silence, or at least the appearance of silence, when the internet's blowing up about NHTSA investigation, it becomes a bigger story than it really needed to be, because they've already addressed it.
Well, like I said, I kind of said the same thing in my video, and I guess it's a matter of interpretation depending on the viewer. But the complaints themselves are just things that need to be noted. But my concern is the investigation itself, and whether NHTSA will address, we all know as owners, adopters, and students of Fisker that, yes, these cars are incomplete, and the owners know it, among the community and whatnot. But at the same time, what's NHTSA going to decide, when it comes to, because we obviously have safety systems that are missing and, not missing, but, still in development. So do you think that the investigation itself will result in any concerns, and what's your take on that?
So I know that there are owners out there and potential owners out there that have concerns, right? Whether those concerns are around having paid for certain features or capabilities in the vehicle and those not having been delivered, right? And in some cases, these are safety-related things, right? But we're in this bold new world where, it's all about the software-defined stack for these EVs and vehicles at large. And so with this specific issue with Fisker, sorry, that's our dog coming to say hello, since she just came back from her walk.
I've got a cat over here having a conversation with me too. No problem.
Yeah. So, I really think that, and I don't necessarily agree the car is incomplete, right? One of the things that gave me some perspective today from talking to so many owners, and I also talked to this one couple that were just interested in this vehicle. And we had a long conversation, walked them through. It was cold, so I actually brought them into my ocean. And I bring that up because one of the things he said to me was, what about the car, right? The car functions. How does it, behave like a car? And it just sort of brought me back to ultimately that's what this is, right? The things that annoy us are the key fob and software glitches. But in terms of the way this thing drives, the way it handles, the comfort, the quality of the build, and the way this thing's put together, I don't think we have a ton of concerns there, right? Absolutely. So that's kind of where we're at, right? Is adaptive cruise control, right. Software to enable the digital radar, and some of those related safety features that
right.
you mentioned.
No, I don't like to pump other YouTube channels up a whole lot, but what I will say is that we've always had our ears open for professional outlets doing reviews, because these have been very sparse so far. But I will recommend.
And we're starting to see them.
Yeah, and Brian actually recommended it to me. I will recommend the Edmunds review. If you are just getting into Fisker and this is part of the rabbit hole that you've gone down, if you want to see a professional outlet do an extremely objective analysis of what's really going on with Fisker right now, I feel like the Edmunds review that was recently released is a great place to start, because it.
Yeah, and the key thing about that one, Adam, I'm glad that you brought it up, is Edmunds bought the car.
Correct.
Right? They own it.
Correct.
Right? So it's not a press vehicle, right? This is their vehicle.
Yes.
And that reviewer did, I thought, as you said, a pretty fair job of helping people understand where we're at with this vehicle. It finished pretty low in the stack ranking, but a lot of that has to do with features that we've paid for that are yet to be delivered via over-the-air software update. Once that happens, it's a different ball game.
You simply can't analyze the effectiveness of an adaptive cruise function that is not available for analysis. So I understand the rating very much. So you've covered the meetup, you've covered kind of what people are thinking, what are on the minds of the owners, and addressed as well the NHTSA concerns, which are really just a recycling of concerns of the past that are now being looked at by the government body, which is totally appropriate in this case. You know, we'll see what that results in. But finally, the last concern, I guess, on the minds of a lot of either potential Fisker owners, current Fisker owners, I know I get a lot of messages about it right now, is bankruptcy and the future going forward. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so this was sort of a water cooler topic for us at the meetup, and it's a totally fair, totally valid concern. And before I get to that, one of the things that sort of had me thinking about this even before today at the meetup is last week I was commuting to work. And I looked over in the opposite lane going in the opposite direction, and I saw, I kid you not, a Lordstown Endurance. It literally was like seeing Bigfoot, right? Or
it's the unicorn.
What I'm calling a unicorn, right?
Yes.
An EV unicorn. Now, Lordstown went bankrupt, right? They filed Chapter 11 last year. And as a part of that filing, they actually filed suit against Foxconn, right? Because they had signed a partnership agreement with Foxconn whereby Foxconn would give them this huge cash infusion, take over the factory that was the Cruise, GM Cruise plant, right outside of Akron there in Lordstown, Ohio. They would build these vehicles, and they actually started doing that, right? Before, the stock price went down below $1, and ultimately Foxconn decided to cancel that agreement and walk away. Well, Lordstown has now sued them as a part of this Chapter 11. The reason that that's relevant is, number one, we've got a recent example there of what might happen if an EV producer goes bankrupt, right? Chapter 11. I think we're a long way from that. And those of us who are in this Fisker world recognize that, some of the strategic decisions that they just made with Magna, for example, to pull back a little bit on the pace of production, freeing up, I think, $300 million in cash, right? Gives them more of a funding runway there for operations. But I bring it back to this Lordstown story because with that lawsuit, that factory in Lordstown was where the Fisker Pear and I believe the Fisker Alaska are scheduled to be built, right? We don't have pen to paper on an agreement, at least in terms of anything that's been publicly announced, right, between Fisker and Foxconn. And I think part of it is the fact that the ownership of that factory is in question until this suit gets resolved, right? That they put forth enough cash with Lordstown to have taken legal ownership, right? That's got to be decided in the courts, and it's still up in the air, which is why the Fisker Pear has been pushed out, I think, to 25 or 20 to 26 now, right? So
the last statement by Henrik Fisker, I believe, was that, we're still on track for 2025, but like you said, no pen to paper.
And I don't know that Foxconn's actually still operating that factory, right? That's got to be settled in the courts. But in terms of, Fisker's future, we don't think that they're anywhere, I don't think that they're anywhere near that sort of point that Lordstown was in. I think they had literally delivered 19 vehicles, right? Fisker's done a little bit better than that. They are homologated in 8 European countries in addition to the US and Canada, right? So we've got that's taking place. We see the vehicles getting better from a software perspective. The more time I spend behind the wheel and in the vehicle, the more I connect with it and enjoy it, right? So we can see it getting better over time, which is, what needs to happen and what is happening. But we all look at the share price as of yesterday. It was in the 80s, right? Under $1. And that's a totally legit concern. I don't buy into the narrative that customer complaints is the reason for the stock price or, the percentage of that stock that's being shorted. The stock price is a reflection of Fisker's execution or lack thereof, in my opinion, right? And there's 3 areas of execution.
Yeah.
The limiting factor here is your ability to deliver at scale. You made the strategic decision to homologate in all these places. Well, you've got to have the logistics to be able to deliver at that type of scale. And I don't mean just get them to port. You got to get them to customers' driveways, right? And they haven't proven that they can do that.
And Fisker has admittedly come forward. Yeah, Fisker's come forward and admittedly said, we had logistics issues. We are working on that. And that expansion has taken place since the Q3 earnings call.
Right. So we need to see them continue to execute on delivery, execute on service, right? The fact that we had 3 or 4 service techs there today is definitely a good sign. People felt like they'd been getting much better support and service over the course of the last month plus, right? So that's a good sign.
And if I could just chime in there, I don't get any complaints about the quality of the service. When a technician is there, when, I feel like they're 110% above and beyond trying to work out the problem. The problems lie in communication from the company itself and the ability to actually order parts, correct the problems with software, things of that nature. But the service itself and the quality of, the employees that are coming, the technicians that are doing the examinations, they say is all stellar. And they seem to all be experienced technicians and have experience in the field previously.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that. Our technician, he contacted me the week before Christmas and said he would be here at our house on December 26th at 9 a.m. And he was here at 8:55 waiting outside when I came out to open the garage. He has 10 years of EV-specific experience, coming most recently from Hyundai, right? And Hyundai's been pretty prolific for a while now, as you know, right, with EVs, right? So he is very, very experienced. Today, I saw him for a few minutes as he was going from car to car, helping different customers, right? And he was one of 3 or 4, at least 3 that were there today helping customers in that way. So that's the second thing, right? Delivery, service, and software. So we've gotten, as I said, 4 OTAs to this point over the course of 3 months. And we should be seeing another pretty significant software update, if not by the end of January, shortly thereafter. So
right.
These vehicles are getting better. And I didn't talk to anyone today who had a hesitation about recommending it to their friends, their boss, people close to them, because overall, the experience with the vehicle is a good one.
Oh, and it's always good to know. So, and I think if you take the NHTSA complaints as a group, there were a couple other things that you also had mentioned to me to cover. Just kind of looking at some of the other gear shifter problem, driver door failures. There were several of those, and the hood flying open. I think there are 2 of those complaints on the site, and I know you actually spoke to one of those people, not one of the NHTSA complaint people, but someone who had that experience as well. What are your thoughts on kind of the other elements of this? I mean, we've already covered that this is not something that's stopping other people from making the recommendation. They kind of went in with the knowledge that, hey, maybe this is not going to be a flawless experience from day one. But you have to, what's your take on those other items?
Yeah, so the hood flying open issue, one of my new friends from this community had that happen. I mean, his car was delivered early in the morning after his wife and son, had already gone to school or preschool and work. And so he had the vehicle, went for a drive, and before they could even get home, the front hood flew open. As it turns out, it was, the 2 bolts that secure it in place weren't installed for some reason. We don't know if this was an error at the VPC, is kind of what I'm thinking, right? Or while it was in port going through customs, who knows, right? But his point was that, and he actually sent me a screenshot of the, I'm not sure if it's NHTSA or some other Department of Transportation regulation, but you're supposed to have a secondary latch on a hood. Well, I think Fisker was able to homologate without that because, as it states in the manual, which Adam's read the entire manual,
it's in there.
That's crazy.
It's in there.
It's only supposed to be open for service, right? But in Khalil's case, long and short of that was there was significant damage to the car. And again, to Chris Fisker's credit, they stepped up, they took that vehicle back, and they gave him a new one in the same spec, right? And so they've done the right thing there. And these are things that are going to happen with a new vehicle being introduced, right? We can point towards what happened with Toyota and the BZ4X, where they literally could not keep the wheels from falling off those vehicles. And Toyota's been building millions and millions of cars for years, right? So those are valid complaints, right? But they are very much edge cases, right? I don't know what the numbers are in terms of what is 2 as a percentage of, 6,000 vehicles that have now been delivered or somewhere thereabouts, right? It's a small percentage. Shouldn't happen, but we know that they do. When you're building stuff, mistakes happen.
My opinion on that, and it is sheerly an opinion, probably is similar to yours, as there was probably a service issue at the point of delivery, or at the the port, as we can say, where the oceans were being stored and finalized for delivery, and whoever had opened the hood had just was just a sheer error to where they had not replaced all the hardware.
And with some of these things, I wonder if other mistakes weren't made, right? I know that there was a question around the seat sensors, right, within these vehicles in the driver's seat, because there's a sensor there that lets the car know that there's someone in it ready to drive. And there were some things that went wrong with that in a few cases where the car wouldn't shift into drive, all right? The driver door issue in terms of it not opening, right? And you know this from having read the manual. Well, even if all the power is lost to the vehicle, you should be able to pull that handle twice, right? And have the manual control click in to be able to open it, right? And that may not be something that that particular driver or owner was aware of. But again, I think by and large, we're dealing with edge cases. I think it's a really good thing that NHTSA is investigating, because ultimately what can happen there is the public at large, right, owners, prospective owners, and so on, can have the reassurance that this has been looked at by a regulatory body and addressed. So that's kind of how I see that.
I can't agree with you more. And I made that point in my first video, just identifying the NHTSA issue, just to kind of get the news out there, is that this may push forward some of the really, core updates that will finalize the functionality of the vehicle, where NHTSA may say, in order to continue selling, we need to make sure that all these vehicles have, whatever functionality they decide. And it could end up being a good thing for owners, current and future owners. And, I think we both agree that if Fisker is able to address the software issues and, any other specific issues that NHTSA may find, which I think was probably, you're in the 90s as far as percentage of problems being software, at that point, you're looking at a real competitor in the market. The price is competitive. The features are competitive. The build quality is better than most. And so, because Tesla is kind of like the punching bag, if you will, when it comes to EV build quality. But we've seen build quality issues with ICE cars. The Ford Maverick was horrible. The Ford Bronco suffered a lot during the pandemic. When these supply chains got constrained, cars were still having to go out the door. The demand was the highest it had ever been. And, when people are knocking at the door telling you they want something, you're going to deliver what you've got. And so now that's an issue across the board. But build quality seems to be kind of the least of Fisker's problems. And if they can get ahead of this software and kind of finish the vehicle, if you will, I do feel like you've got an extremely competitive offering. Maybe the best design, but certainly at the very top of the software, hardware, driving, suspension, customer experience deal. I don't know what your take is on that, but I feel like we're probably on the same page there.
We definitely are. And it's such a huge opportunity for them, right? This is the class of vehicle that Americans love, right? The mid-size SUV. And there are several things about the Fisker Ocean that are unique in its class, right? Starting with the design, the fact that it's got an opening, pretty large opening sunroof, a number of other unique features with California mode, the solar panel, even the silly taco trays. Folks are starting to realize, it's kind of useful while I'm charging if I can have a place to put my laptop or a place to put my lunch or dinner or what have you. The range is great. The vehicle drives really well. So the opportunity is definitely there. And it's all about execution now, right? So,
well, I know you're probably one of the few. You have two EVs with an opening roof, and I know you're a sunroof guy. So, the uniqueness of that is certainly something that people will latch onto. And also, a point that you made earlier that I'd like to reiterate is that this vehicle has the ability to take an ICE owner and convert them to electric. And that's really important, especially in the market now. During the next 5 years, what needs to be built to convince your average Joe that doesn't do a lot of research to say, you know what, I'm ready to take the leap and move to a battery electric vehicle. And I do think Fisker has that in this offering.
Yeah. I've enjoyed the conversations with folks that are new to EVs. There's work to be done in terms of public charging infrastructure, especially DC fast charging. We also need more level 2 chargers out there. We need better EV education, right? But this stuff is coming. I mean, when you think about internal combustion engines and vehicles that use them, it's over 100 years of history and learnings, right, and infrastructure that's in place. We're right at the very beginning of this transition to EVs, right? There's no question that it's going to happen, right? Folks can push back on it as much as they want, but it's going to happen, right? Nobody's going to come take your pickup truck or whatever ICE vehicle that you have, but this transition is going to happen. And, I'm hoping that as you're doing with your channel, right, that I can play a small role in helping folks make that transition. As we talked about earlier when we were prepping for this, my neighbor right across the street got an Ioniq 5. I'm not sure if it's been more than a year yet, but they absolutely love it, right? So I want to be able to talk to people like that and bring it to this channel to talk about who is it that owns an EV? Why did they make that decision, right? What's been their experience? What do they love about them? What do they loathe about their EVs? And hopefully the idea there is to help people in terms of sharing that, understand that this is not the boogeyman, right? There's a little bit of education that you've got to do, as you would with any vehicle that you go to adopt, right? In terms of understanding what you need to know. But then, it just becomes a natural part of, your life, whatever your use case is. It's not something that you constantly have to, be burning brain cycles in order to live with day to day.
Yeah, and I do think that's a big part of it, is that those who have been deep in the research, up to now, are the ones that are the most likely to switch. When you start doing the research and you start having the working knowledge, that's your early adopters, and they have moved because, based on what they've learned, this is an advantageous situation for them. But I do think that you need to get the major public into it. And I also, there's a blame to be put on the manufacturers. They're walking away from EV projects. They're pushing back on timelines. But the other thing is that just as much as you need to convince the public to convert and to want and to create that demand, you also need to, that's on the burden of the manufacturer too. If that demand's not there, they're not going to go after it. So it's a tough climate now and all that. But Brian, I think we've covered a lot of topics, and you also mentioned just a minute ago sharing and getting your experience out there. And I'd like for everyone watching this to do the exact same thing. Let us know your Fisker experience down in the comments below. Let us know some things that we might have missed or that we should definitely touch on. And if you have an idea for something you'd like Brian to cover in the EV space in general, this is the guy. He's owned multiple Model S's in the past. He has a Model X that he lives with. He also has one, I believe, at up in Cape Cod, right? Doesn't it live there?
Yeah, we just moved her up there. Dove lives on the Cape for now, but right now, we're tremendously blessed to have, Valkyrie or Rivian R1T. We probably should rename that thing Beast, because it is an absolute beast. I'm looking forward to sharing more about that vehicle, because it's special with what Rivian's done. Yeah. So,
and if you have any questions for Brian about any of his EVs, encourage you now, make sure that you let him know in the comments below. If this was a compelling topic for you, make sure you smash the like button. And Brian is brand new, as you can see from the subscriber count, to the EV space as far as being a creator, but extremely experienced in his actual working knowledge. So hit subscribe. We'll have plenty more in-depth videos and topics that are coming that you certainly will be interested in if you had any interest in what we were covering today. Brian, do you have anything else you want to cover or add before we, head on out?
No, just want to thank you again, Adam. Some things are just meant to happen, right? And I don't know that we talked about how you and I met, right? We talked about that video that I watched, the sweaty YouTuber video, and
if there was an award for that,
you would have won it, right?
I might have. I'd be in the running.
Yeah, but Fisker had that pop-up event in Brooklyn, New York, right? I live here in Maryland now, but I grew up in Brooklyn. My daughter, my dad are up there, and couldn't wait to go see this vehicle in person for the first time. And I get up there. I've got my other daughter with me, and we're looking forward to a great day, in Brooklyn, get to see this vehicle. And I go to get online, and I'm like, this is the T-shirt guy in front of me. And the rest is history, right? Getting a chance to explore the vehicle with you, with Connie. So I'm thankful that happened and that we've had a chance to connect, and going to enjoy taking this journey with you.
Yeah, you'll forever go down in history as the living proof that the back seat of the Fisker Ocean can fit a tall person. I don't even think Fully Charged could compete, because their guy is 6'5", and you've got an inch on him even. So,
somebody published a video with a guy 6'8",
okay.
I believe, sitting in the back of it. So we might have been moved to silver medal.
Records were made to be broken, and that's totally okay. But yeah, if you have any questions, make sure you hit us up in the comments below. I'll be in the comments section on and off, but I do want to give Brian an opportunity to respond to some of those. And if we don't get back to you right away, we're gonna blame it on inexperience at this point, as this is brand new for both of us. So make sure that you subscribe, check us out, and just as far as resources, if you're interested in Fisker's future and bankruptcy and all that, I made an entire video about that, and I'll link it in the description as well.
Yeah, that was a great video that helps people understand even if we get to that worst case scenario, here's what can happen, right? So it's not really something that, we were concerned about in our discussions today. So
right, and if you're still watching, you made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for tuning in. Brian, we'll get together and we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. See ya.